Hi everybody, welcome to the live today. I am going to see if I can get DJ Solitaire on here. Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
hey. Is it?
Hey,
I
how are
think
you?
it's showing it's connecting. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm good. How are you?
good.
Okay,
Welcome.
the track you are playing now. This is like, I don't know. You probably don't know this, but this was like one of my favorite tracks in my first couple of months of going to parties. So I'm like kind of mind blown already right now.
Oh yeah, I got your mix playing in the background.
Oh, cool. Okay, that would explain it. I was like,
Yeah,
wow, haven't
yeah,
heard that one in a while.
yeah. Hi, mom. Mark saying hi. Mom saying hi to you.
Hey, Mandy, good to see you. Glad you're here.
Can you hear me okay? Is the music too
Yeah,
loud or?
nope, nope. Your voice is taken over, so yeah, it's sounding good.
Okay, cool. How's everything in Vancouver?
Gray as usual. How's everything? How's
Yeah, it's
everything in
pretty
Prince?
gray here today as well.
And cold?
Yeah, it's okay.
All right,
It's
good.
not in the minus, so that's good.
That's rare. Good.
Yeah. Uh,
Awesome.
so
Glad to be able to chat face to face.
yeah, hey, it's been forever.
It has. I know it's weird.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we're
think.
actually in the same
Huh?
time zone.
Yeah, same time zone.
Actually
I
the
think the
same
last
time zone, which is
last time
rare.
I saw you like actually face to face, I guess was at ZNA, wasn't it?
I think it was Portugal. That's right. God, which is almost 2 years, which is kind
I
of
know.
crazy.
And then all this madness happened, so no visiting, no.
I know. I know. Yeah, I haven't been up there in forever, and you haven't been down here in a while either. So,
Yeah,
oh well, soon
yeah.
hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Yep.
Uh,
Totally.
so I'm gonna start. Like, what should I start with? I was thinking. Well,
Mm,
first of all, I wanted to ask, like, when you started getting into like psytrance or goa trance music or electronic
mm,
music,
mm.
and yeah, how that all became and how you started like becoming a DJ and stuff.
Yeah, it was very unexpected,
Yeah.
like I think a lot of things in our lives. Um, but I was living in Tokyo from '92,
Okay.
and I remember in '93 there was this guy I worked with who said, "Oh, I found this like there's this really cool rave happening," and I was like, what's a rave? What are you talking about? And I had no idea. And apparently I suspect he was talking about these parties that became totally legendary, the what were they called, Twilight Zone parties that
Oh.
took place sort of under the train tracks in the south of
Okay.
Tokyo in a business district. So I never went because I wasn't interested. So basically, like growing up, I listened to pop music, but it was, in my home, we had a lot of classical music. And that's basically what I focused on, especially when I was 15. I got very seriously into classical music. So I
Okay.
kind of tolerated pop music, but I wasn't really
It
so
wasn't
much
your.
into it. I mean, kind of, 80s when I was a teen, I mean, there's some pretty good music. And when I was in elementary school, though, I mean, I was listening to Blondie and B-52s and everything. So I was kind of young maybe for listening to that stuff. But,
Yeah.
I was into some of the, some stuff. And Donna Summer, right, with that amazing, I Feel Love, with that incredible bass line, which is almost like a precursor
Yeah.
to a lot of the Goa stuff. But then in '94, a friend of mine in Tokyo said, "Oh man, you got to come to one of these parties." And because he was a closer friend of mine than this guy who I'd worked with, I was like, "All right, I'll check it out." And I wasn't even aware that there was a DJ or that there was anything. Like, I was just in this room and there was this like weird music and I couldn't understand it, and I just really enjoyed sort of whatever was going on.
What's going on? And that
And
was in
then
90, what did you say, 95?
94.
94.
So that was September 94. And then in October 94, we went to this other party, like a one-off, and it was Ollie who was playing.
Oh, okay, Ollie, yeah.
And this was like, so this was the first like real Goa party. And as soon as I walked in the room and I saw the fluoro and saw like, you know, this fractal stuff and all this colorful clothing moving around and heard this music, I was like, it was literally like a just all at once kind of flash of like, yeah, this is it.
This is it.
You know, and it was, I just thought, you know, like I'd walked into an alien nightclub, and it wasn't like alien in the way that, you know, there's pictures of aliens or there's anything like, it wasn't pushing a message at all, but there was just that sense of it that, you know, this is like, I was like, wow, man, if they had like clubs in other planets, this is probably what it would look like and sound like. You know, it was just like, it was just kind of what it was, you know, what hit me at the time. And, you know, I wasn't really like into dancing much, but I just danced all night, and I couldn't get my head around the music. Like I couldn't figure out what I was hearing, but I just loved it. And I was like, okay, there's something to this. And I met David there, who was importing Space Tribe clothing. He had organized the party, and he kind of, you know, would get together with him occasionally, and he'd sort of talk to me a little bit about this global movement around this. And it just seemed like a little like, yeah, so what kind of thing. But the more and more I was listening and going to these regular parties every 2 weeks with local DJs, I just got completely sucked in and was trying to get like, you know, what is the flavor and what is the feeling of this music? You know, something like so futuristic that I couldn't quite grasp, but with a classical background. Like I just loved the variety. For me, it sounded more intelligent than a lot of, you know, pop music or like ordinary stuff. So I just fell in love with it, and that was it. And then,
so if I'm getting this correct, like the first time was obviously in Japan then.
Yeah.
Was when you was in Japan when you first got into the electronic scene.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when I look back, like growing up, I realized, you know, my parents had some album of like Bach music, like, you know, Baroque classical music played on synthesizer. So I like actually heard that as a kid, right? And then there was like Doctor Who, you know, with the synthesizer stuff. I had the 45 of Popcorn, you know, like the first synthesized track in like 1975. Like I still have the 45. So like I kind of had this sense of synthesized music, but never really was drawn to it until just like having that experience in 94.
Okay.
And when did you first go to Japan?
Oh, connection.
For you first.
Gee, I can't even remember.
Oh, we're freezing.
Yeah, it was freezing. God, I'm trying to think of the first year I went there. I mean, I can't really remember. I know the first time I went to Japan, like, was, I don't know, probably I was like 18 or 19. But, yeah, that wasn't like when I first went there to play. That was just to go visit. I think I started, I don't know, man, I'm going to say 96, 97.
Okay, so a bit later. Yeah, I mean, Japan was a really great place to get into it because I was already kind of, you know, being a foreigner, I was already kind of in the mindset that, you know, everything I've learned is just relative because you know, I'm living in this other country where I'm not the majority. My way of living is like not the predominant way of living or the way that I grew up. And so then walking into this club and hearing this, like, again, like it just kind of turned everything upside down from like what I was used to for like, you know, clubbing or partying or music or anything like that. Like it was just a whole other concept. So I think Japan was such an ideal place for that, as well as the fact that, you know, the clubs are nice and, you know, the people are friendly. And
Yeah.
It was a great scene there.
So, okay, so that's where you got into it. And then, where did it go from there? Like, where's the next places you went to? A great place to party, Japan. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I was partying pretty heavy duty for like 2 years there, I guess, until '96.
Okay,
And
so you were
then
in Japan for 2 years. Oh,
I
okay.
lived there 3.5, but I basically
Okay.
got into it at the beginning of my, in a sense, third year or so. And then it was just kind of, like trying to stop a train once I was on board, and I just realized like I kind of wanted to get involved because of my musical background, and I just felt like I wasn't clear that I wanted to DJ or write music or what.
Okay.
But I decided to move to London because I was kind of done with Japan. It just like there's a saturation point when you're living there where it's just like, being
Yeah.
in the city, it's just tiring and stressful. And
Yeah.
so I moved to London in September '96 and
Okay.
stayed there a year and a half. And I have to say, I mean, it was kind of a peak time, but it was also a turning time for the scene, right? Like it was starting to reach this apex. And I was really disappointed by London in a sense, by the parties, because, just like I was saying, like Japan, it was like so, super clean clubs and everybody's like super friendly and vibing and everything. And London parties, man, it was just like, God forbid you should have it in a nice venue. It
Yeah.
was like
Which was the first? What parties did you go to when you first went to London then?
Tyson Street.
Okay.
There was all kinds of parties happening at Tyson Street, and there was great stuff. I mean, there's no question. Like, I had a good time, and musically, I mean, there were some fantastic artists, but it was just like it wasn't quite what I was hoping for, and it might be also just because of the fact that, whenever I think one of the things that changes for us in the scene is, with our perception of it, is the longer you've been in it, you have expectations or you have desires or you have wishes. And when we first got into it, it was the fact that we had no expectations and no image of what it should be like and no perceptions of it that just completely blew our minds, because it obviously surpasses your expectations.
Yeah, it was pretty much just like, people going to the parties to have a good time, and it was I mean, I don't know, like,
yeah,
I don't know, did you go to any were you there at the time? Did you go to any of the youth parties or anything like that, or just?
I went to one. I think I was a little bit late for that. There was one that I went to. I remember I was at, now you and I never met until like way later, right? Like we've actually met in Canada like around 2009 or 10, I think. But we had these close calls. So like I remember being at a little Flying Rhino party at some like divey little record shop or something like this in '97 in London, and you were there with like when you had your short blonde hair phase.
My short blonde hair.
And I remember seeing you there and somebody pointing you out and saying, telling me who you were, and that you were a DJ and you were playing and stuff, and with connected with Juno Reactor. But I never heard you play in London. But that was the only time, so we didn't meet then. And then in '98, you and I actually played at the same party in Japan, but the guy put a techno DJ between us and totally like killed the flow, and like you and I didn't actually meet there because of that. There was this whole like kind of separation there. So
we met in Canada.
Of all places.
And wasn't that at the Karma party? The first, I think
it was Shambhala.
Oh, it's Shambhala. Yeah, was it?
It was at Shambhala. Yeah. It was up in Shambhala, and then you played Karma afterwards with Ollie.
Yes.
And then there was Shambhala. We did Shambhala 2 years in a row. We went up the second year. For that one together. Yeah. So
kind of crazy how we went all those like countries together, like Japan, England, but then we met finally in Canada.
I know.
and then I ended up living here.
I know. It's so weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like you can't write any of this stuff, and that's kind of the thing for me that's still so strange looking at my involvement in the scene. Like I was talking to somebody from elementary school recently who I hadn't talked with in ages. And when he heard about this, he's like, "You do what?" Like, he's just like, never could have imagined that I would get into, like, there's no way anybody who knew me as a kid or even as a teen or whatever ever would have predicted that I would get into this kind of thing.
You get into the trance scene.
No way.
Oh, funny. And then so what year did you start actually DJing then? When was that?
Yeah, so before I left Japan, I bought my DAT players.
Okay.
So I already had it in my head that I was going to play on DAT because of unreleased music and all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And there was no CDJs at the time.
No.
Right? I mean,
It was either. It was
you know the
either.
technology. You were the last person to play on DAT.
I
You were like
know.
the last DJ. I thought I was the last because I think I changed in 2004.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I played until 2002 for sure, but I think 2004 was the first time I really played on like regularly, like on
Okay.
CDs without
CDs.
that.
Yeah.
But
It took me a while to get used to CDs.
I hated CDs. I always hated CDs. Love
Yeah.
that, and I love computer. I actually love playing on the computer, but I really got it. I know, I think you and I have talked about this before. Like you get into the flow of the DAT, like of the sort of, you know, the pause and the sort of the fact that you have to go a half step before.
Yeah.
And there's also kind of the excitement because like, oh, is the mix going to work? You know, and you're kind of on edge because, you know, it's very different than when there's that level of control.
Yeah.
So it's kind
Exactly.
of,
Yeah.
you got to be
That's why.
creative. So
Yeah.
that's how I
I think
learned how
that's why
to
it took
DJ.
me so. Huh?
Yeah, go ahead.
That's how you learned how to DJ, was on that?
Yeah, and I just taught myself. I mean, you know, I just had to figure it out by myself. And, you know, I had a good sense of flow, I think, because of the classical training. And I could tell right away, you know, like these two pieces won't go together because it's like a different key or something like that. I could tell which keys would go together. And
Okay.
I started writing down the keys of the tracks on my DATs in like 97. I started paying attention to that. But so yeah, I mean, I kind of just got creative with it and just started, you know, and I was just observing people, right? So I met Tsuyoshi in 96 and he was like super
Okay.
friendly. And I could, you know, go into the DJ booth at Return to the Source in London and like watch, you know, so I was just kind of always like, you know, my eyes over and sort of watching what he's doing with EQ and stuff like that. But I never had any lessons. I just had to like figure it out by myself. So, you know,
Yeah.
it's all kind of hit. I mean, it's probably the same for you, no? Or did
Oh
you get
yeah.
any?
I was never taught, man. I just made mixtapes for friends, and when I made mixtapes, we're talking about when I was playing with the professional Walkman. So it was cassette, you know.
Yeah.
So it was pretty much pause, play, pause, play.
Yeah.
I made tapes like that, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when I got hold of a mixer, I mean, you know, I just played around myself. I didn't, you know, I just like loved music, so I loved playing around.
That's it. I mean,
yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I used to make mixtapes before I had a mixer. I would just make mixtapes and just let the ambient outro, you know, I'd pause there and then have the next one start. So it was like a real like long Goa mix. And my friends were all talking about my mix, and I was like, well, it wasn't really a mix. It was just a cassette, you know? So, but I was kind of into the storytelling. And I have to say that, you know, in Japan, I heard a lot of super awesome DJs. So I really, you know, for me, because I always had, there was a part of my brain that was listening to how the story was going and how it went with the light at outdoor parties and, you know, just the different kinds of things that worked at different stages.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, it was experiential. So it felt like, you know, going through that as a dancer, I got a sense of like how it is, you know, and there's not one way to do it, right? But, you know, this kind of track can sound really good at 2 or 3, or it can also sound like really different in the morning or at this phase in the morning or at that phase.
It depends if it's indoor or outdoor as well. It just varies.
Totally.
And then I wanted to ask, like, so have you actually been to Goa or to India?
I have. I went to India in '96 and I never went to Goa.
Oh, really?
Which is kind of hilarious. I know. It's very, very weird. But even, you know, in 97, I remember Tsuyoshi telling me, he's like, oh, you know, it's changed. You know, you don't really have to go. I would have liked to. I might have been, you know, disappointed like I was in London. I don't know. I mean, you know, you were there so much earlier that you saw it in its heyday and the whole sort of transformation and, you know, how everything shifted.
Yeah.
So, you know, no, I never went to any parties in India. I never went to Goa.
Oh, that's a shame.
I know, it is.
Well, you know, you can still go. It's never too late.
No, I know. But it's a little bit like, you know, it's like going to the, I don't know. you go to the church where, you know, something famous happened like 500 years ago, but it's like 500 years ago. It's not now, right? For me, I mean, it looks like the vibe has really changed a whole lot. I mean,
but,
you know, it's not.
That also happens everywhere, doesn't it? Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, look at here in like, I mean, you know, Vancouver, like say Vancouver area. Like, I mean, when I first came here, like the parties, they were like, there was some cool like parties. Like, yeah, they weren't very big, but there was some nice parties and awesome vibes. But now look, there's like, it's,
You know,
there's,
I mean, this is happening globally. I think there's a lot of reasons. But also, I think the concept of the big party being what we should aim for is one that I think is really worth revisiting. Because, you know, all the I went to some really great big parties. There's no question, like ZNA, that where we, you know, we were at like the last 3 times. I mean, it's gotten bigger and bigger. It's all, you know, it was amazing vibes. But you know, the small ones, there's something to be said about this containment and this really like tribal sort of, you know, like when I first went to that party in Tokyo, even though it was in a club, it didn't feel like it was in a club. And
yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, the small ones, obviously, you know, there's more of a tribal energy for sure, you know, like when it gets like over 1,000 people, it gets, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I think part of it though is also, you know, there's this thing about being able to be on the dance floor and you see people at different times throughout the night, throughout the story. Having surround sound, I think, is one of the big things that's really killed it. You know, having things be on a stage where everybody's facing in one direction and you're, you know, mostly sort of facing people's backs, and it becomes like a rock concert. That's really shifted it from this 360-degree, you know, there's no front, there's no back, you know, and you're in this frame of mind where it's like there's no up, there's no down, like which way's up in outer space, you know, which ways are planet facing, you know, this whole kind of thing. Like having that surround sound for me really is what made it, I think, at the early parties. And that whole and I know everybody's saying like there's no place. I would love to go, Mandy. I would love to go to Goa.
There's a Touch of Cash. He's a friend of mine. He's a rapper actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, a couple of people saying, you know, Goa still got vibe. I mean, look, I'd love to go. I'd love to see it, but I'm aware that, you know, I think even, you know, tying in just sort of the fact that I play a lot of retro sets and I'm kind of known for retro, even though I love and I actually prefer playing sets with new music. You know, there's something in the old music, but you know, it's not the same when you're trying to recreate something from the past. Like the whole experience of when we first experienced was that it was new.
Yeah. But
and so
saying, but saying that, like, probably for you, if you went to Goa, it would be your first time, so you can't really, you wouldn't be able to compare.
That's it.
Pay cash, you wouldn't be able to compare like now or how it was, right? For you, it would be like, it would be a, you know, a first time experience anyway. So
absolutely. No, and it wouldn't be what it was way back, you know, when Laurent was doing stuff or whatever, you know, for sure. And, you know, that won't happen, and that's fine. I mean, I still think you can touch the vibe. And I also think, though, that anybody who goes to the right party with the right DJ and the right organizers and it's just the right vibe, they're going to get it.
Yeah.
You know, like I know people who, you know, I know people who haven't left Canada and been to international parties, and like some of them are like, there's a couple who are like amazing DJs, like they totally get it, they totally get the story, they totally get the vibe, you know, and a lot don't, you know, and you need to go sort of overseas and sort of experience these parties and see what it's like in other places. So I think it depends, but I mean, hey, I love traveling, I'd love to go. I know at this point of course I'd love to travel anywhere.
And then so what other, like, so what are the other places that you've been, like, to DJ, Mark? Like, where have you?
Japan, a bit, not heaps. I mean, when I lived back in Japan in '98, I was DJing quite a bit. Where else? I mean, kind of in Canada, just a little bit, not heaps, you know. That's another sort of story of what happens when you know, live in your hometown. But, you know, I played sort of a bit throughout Canada, Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal.
You played in Portugal?
Portugal, Belgium. I mean, they got a big retro scene. Oh, and Mandy was just saying she disagrees. Old style still rocks. Believe me, I love old style. I mean, I love the old school music, and I work a lot in that, right? Because with DAT Records, I'm like helping excavate all this old stuff, and we've got one of my retro tracks in the back, or retro mixes in the back. So I love that, but I also want to play like new stuff because it gives you more of that fresh in the moment, you know, sort of new experience, which you can't really get if you're listening to an old track that you've heard before.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, even though the story will be different and stuff. But so back to your question, yeah, I mean, I've played just a little bit in Europe. London only played once. Tokyo a few times in the 90s, and then again a bit more recently. Belgium just the once, and Portugal last 3 ZNAs, which were like some of the best experiences I had. They really get the vibe like big time, so that was like perfect for me with all of the like just the right people and the right set.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, so Japan and Portugal and obviously Canada. We played it in a few of the same places as well. We played it. Yeah, I'm trying to think.
We played at Shambhala together. I mean,
we played at Shambhala,
played...
and then we played at one place in Victoria. I can't
oh
remember.
God, yeah, that's right.
Remember that?
I do remember that. That's right. Yeah, that was like 2012. That was in early 2012. That's right.
Yeah,
I remember because it was like that supposedly apocalyptic year that never happened.
Yeah. That was in a club. That was the first time I'd been to Victoria. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then I wanted to ask, like, what are some of your favorite, like, you know, artists? Like, I'm gonna ask also from like, you know, back, say, you know, in the 90s, and then like some of your favorite like now.
Sure. I mean, I was really into all of the big, you know, sort of the formative bands back then, right? Like Total Eclipse, Hallucinogen, Infinity Project, Doof, Man with No Name. I mean, all of them, you know, one of the things I loved about it back then was especially they all had their kind of signature. And it all felt like, you know, they all had their own, you know, as we know now, you know, they all had their own studios with different equipment, and they had their style. And, you know, for me, it seemed like in a set, you were putting all of these different pieces of a puzzle together. And like each one was a different key because they had their certain chord, you know, and so, you know, Prana had their, and Total Eclipse did that, you know, sort of thing going on. And Graham Wood had his, you know, growly thing going on with Tip and Excess Head. And Man with No Name had his up and down stuff happening. And I just loved all of those guys. But, you know, there was also projects like lesser known projects that I discovered just when I was collecting on DAT later on. You know, too many to name. But recently, I mean, you know, a lot of these old guys, I still love the new music they're producing. But then there's, you know, Coxbox, you know, for example, and, you know, I love some of his new stuff. It's been awesome. Total Eclipse 2, Steph is still, you know, at it. Tsuyoshi has been putting out absolute killers. And all these people he's working with as well, right? Like Uni and Filteria. Gorovich is an absolutely brilliant guy I heard at where was it last year, just before the lockdowns, in Tribal Gathering in Panama.
Oh, okay, yeah, I saw you played there as well.
Yeah, that was got out just in time. So I love him. Aya or Aja, I never know how to pronounce it. Pronounce it with a Swiss way. You know, there's Aja, yeah, love his stuff. And, you know, I know a lot of people are not really into the, you know, there's this da-da-da-da-da-da bass line, which, you know, a lot of people overuse. For me, it's like, it all depends what's going on top. You know, I'm not like, it's not just the bass line, and there's enough variety of music that's still being made now. So I love mixing all styles now. I think there's some fantastic new music, but I definitely, you know, I still love the old music, and I love some of the off the wall stuff now as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's still, like, of course, there's still, you know, lots of amazing new music coming out, but also a lot of it, you know, a lot of the new music that's coming out is like also by artists that I like back in the day, you know.
That's it. I mean, I didn't mention Juno Reactor. I mean, it's like, you know. We froze a little bit there.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, another one from back in the day, Juno Reactor, right? I mean, like, great stuff.
Yeah, Junior Actor, yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's so many, and it's a shame there was so many, like, for me personally, good artists back then, but that stopped making music, which is kind of sad. Like, you know, Paul Jackson, Graham Wood. You know, there was so many. Like then they were so
Brilliant.
like they were geniuses, really.
Total
but,
geniuses.
Yeah, but they just like stopped, so it's kind of a shame.
Yeah,
but,
Graham's doing a little bit.
Yeah, I'm gonna be getting Graham on an interview, like hopefully in the next couple of months.
Good.
So, and Mike McGuire,
Good.
so that'll be like
Yeah. Graham's wicked. He's amazing.
And then obviously, you know, Dino, because Dino's gonna be on in a couple of weeks, but you know, he was also like, I mean,
oh my God, one of the most amazing DJs ever. Like just seamless. And when he played at ZNA as well last year, I was just like, 2 years ago now.
Oh, his set was amazing. Like, yeah, it was so cool. I had such a good dance. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. And you know, that's what I love as well, not just the artists, but I think back then, like the DJs especially who started back then, they know how to make a story where it's not just about the mix and everything sounding the same. It's not that at all. Like the mixes can be smooth, but it's like this wave of music and these different sounds. And with Dino, you just never knew what was going to happen. All of a sudden, it's like, oh man, I'm in another track. You know, it's just all of a sudden, like it's like the entire like the room completely spins around and you're somewhere else. You know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. Yeah, I love his sets.
Yeah, we had I mean, for me, you know, obviously back way back for me, like DJ Laurent, like was one of the DJs that took me on a totally like different level.
Everybody's raved about Laurent. Everybody just says he was like and I can only imagine, right?
Yeah.
And the style of music was really different back then. So it's kind of, you know, the fact I got in '94, I think for a lot of people, like their style really usually is from like the period that they got into. Not always, but you know, for me, like the stuff before it doesn't hit me quite as strongly because of like the impact of like my first experience. But Laurent, like there's no question, like, you know, bowing to the master, like he was
a genius, like amazing. And then I also wanted to ask you, like, have you produced or collaborated with anybody?
I've done a bit, not as much. I mean, I think I originally really wanted to do a lot more than I did just because of the classical background, but just the opportunities didn't really present themselves. Went to the Total Eclipse studio only once, like briefly in '99, and did one little thing in a track that later became 10 Years in Trance. It started off, I brought the sample from the Men in Black movie for that. Did some stuff with some local guys. I did one with a few tracks with Blue Lunar Monkey. He's a Mexican guy living here. We went to Victoria with him.
Yeah.
When we went to that party. And I did a couple of tracks with Tron recently. And and then with another local guy, I did one that's like, I think probably like the one I'm the happiest with. I did with a local Vancouver guy last year that I'm really happy with and want to do a bit more tweaking once we can go back into studios and do that.
And then I was going to ask you, so you're with a label, right? And it's is it Dat Records?
Yeah, Dat Records is, so basically, you know, the guy we met sort of on this before Facebook. You remember life before the internet and Facebook? It's kind of wild.
Yeah.
We met on this Goa chat forum, and I went on a trip to Europe. I went to visit Federico in Italy, and he was just manic about like these old tracks and unreleased stuff. And, you know, he had the technology, so I just like lent him, you know, in installments, all of my DATs, and he transferred all of them. And some of that became sort of the foundations of some of the first releases on DAT Records. And so, you know, what we've been doing with the label is some compilations and also some artist, like, you know, retrospectives of major artists. Like we did Doof, we did his, we did Doof's album with a whole album of parallel, like alternate mixes and all unreleased mixes of each track from the main album. So it was like this
Oh,
kind of parallel dimension kind of album. And,
okay.
you know, and what's weird is, you know, some of this stuff some things took years to come into fruition. Like it was in 97, I played at Tsuyoshi's house and Nick Doof was there and came up with a DAT of an alternate mix of Destiny.
Oh, it froze.
Oh my God,
Freezing.
is this really happening? You know, so it was the most beautiful track I'd ever heard. He never copied it for anybody. I didn't get a copy of it then. And then 16 years later, we thought to put it on a compilation, and I wrote to him, and he couldn't remember it. And then eventually he found it, and then we came up with the idea of how many alternate mixes would he have, and we ended up being able to do that.
Okay.
So it was weird how, like, you know, the seeds planted in 97 sort of took, you know, it took like 15 or almost 20 years
Yeah.
for some of them to come up. So we've done a bunch of you know, we've done a bunch of artist retro things like that. Your buddy's leaving. Bye. Apparently I glitched out over here. Alternate mix of Destination Bomb. And what was funny is actually Nick said afterwards, he's like, I like this one better than the one that was released. I don't know why they released the other one. You know, and it's just kind of weird how that happens. So one of the things we do with the label is, you know, we find unreleased mixes and we do artists, so, you know, either various artist compilations or, you know, entire
Okay.
releases devoted to artists. So yeah.
Okay. So that's that records. And so have you got anything? I mean, obviously now with what's going on, but I'm wondering, have you got anything did you have anything planned or lined up for like next year?
Yeah. I mean, we're waiting to see, you know, what's happening in Europe, obviously, this coming year, and
Yeah.
whether anything's going to happen. Unfortunately, you know, I was supposed to play at this great party last year that Suntrip were throwing, you know, Apsara, and then, of course, you know, that got canceled like everything else. I am doing a compilation for Matsuri, so I also, as much as like
Okay.
I'm doing the retro stuff, for DAT. I'm doing sort of helping out at Matsuri Digital,
Okay.
you know, with their press releases, and then Tsuyoshi invited me to do a compilation, which, you know, with the last year is taking a little bit longer than I was hoping to get together. But
Okay, cool. So is this your first compilation or
definitely first one of like new stuff for sure. I mean,
Okay.
I've kind of, a lot of the, you know, ones on DAT Records I contributed to, you know, so not entirely my production, but yeah, this will be the first complete one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
That'll
so I'm
be
excited
fun, hey?
about that. Yeah, there's a couple of, yeah, there's a bunch of, like, the tracks I've got are like, I think they're pretty awesome. And, you know, I think the thing that I'm trying to do is do what was done back then, where it's like, it's not a uniform sound, but there's still a story. Like, there's a variety, you know, and each producer has their signature, and there's like a variety of different styles, but it's not random. It still kind of has a flow,
Okay.
like a DJ set. So I'm just waiting for one or two more tracks that people have been promising me, and then hopefully we get it out soon.
Oh, cool. That's exciting, hey?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that'll be on
Matsuri, I've been loving what.
So
Like,
that'll be
first of
on
all,
Matsuri. Okay.
yeah, they've been coming out with some absolutely killer music. I think it's just been fantastic. So I've been really excited by what they're putting out, where it's, you know, it's got like that fresh new feeling, but it also has those roots of like the original Goa stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's what, you know, Sayoshi's really into, is the old school stuff, you know.
Which he wasn't in the 90s, right? Like in the late 90s, he started moving away from it. And I totally get now, I didn't then, but I totally get why, where people were getting very set in, like, you know, this is the kind of music that Goa is, and this is what we should be playing. Whereas, you know, when you were hearing Laurent and all of those guys in the beginning, there was no
Hi,
set.
Ezra. It's my brother's on.
Hey, cool.
Hi,
There was
Ezra.
there was no set sound, right? Like, people just played whatever, and they made sense out of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, things started getting a little bit uniform, and I think a lot of people rebelled against it sort of in the late 90s. But yeah, Tsuyoshi's really still got that fire and passion, and brings this like incredible vibe and intelligence and electricity.
Yeah. Have you also, I was going to ask, have you released any like CD, like DJ mixes at all?
Never released anything. I just kind of...
Oh, Marley's on. Hi, Marley.
Hey, Marley.
My son's on.
Hey, Marley. So how old was Marley when we met? This is like crazy, right? Because he's like a giant now. He's like taller than me.
Yeah, I think it was you met Marley.
I met him in his
Was it?
Batman phase.
Yeah, that was at Shambhala.
Yeah, he was like 4, I
He was
think,
4. Yeah,
or 5.
he was on Shambhala stage in his Batman.
I remember that. That was awesome.
He's
Yeah,
got
hey
thumbs up.
Marley, good to see you. And now you're like a head taller than me, at least I'm sure.
Yeah, I think he's around. I think he's around 5'8", 5'9", something like that. I think 5'8", he's saying, but
okay, yeah, still
yeah,
taller.
yeah,
But yeah, I never released a compilation, right? I mean, because I think the CD compilations that like the whole industry started shifting, right? And I kind of, I was really like underground. I'm still pretty underground, right? For the longest time. So it was just in the last 10 years with Dat Records, I've kind of, and with the internet and SoundCloud, that I've sort of gotten a little bit more reach than just sort of like where I live or where
yeah,
like
yeah.
people knew me.
Okay.
Never
Oh,
released
you're
a
breaking up
mix or
again.
anything. Yeah, I mean, I still remember. I have some of your mixes from.
I'm from Canada.
Let me see if I have one of you. I have some of your mixes here. Here we go. I've got 2. I've got 3 of them right
Oh,
on
really? You got
hand
3 of
over
my
here.
mixes?
Let's go to my very disorganized CD drawer, and
Oh,
let's see what we've got.
you got my moon mix. Oh, sweet.
I've got that one, and I've got this one.
Oh, that's one of
That's
my favorites.
super amazing. I know that Nerve track
Yeah.
you start with, and then this one, of course.
Ah, yeah, the domino effect.
So great. Yeah, I mean, so like, CD mixes, unfortunately, it's not really a thing now, the whole market is just completely different, right? So
Yeah. I'm hoping to get on do another one at some point. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe by May next year, maybe.
that would be good.
Yeah,
That would be
Habitat
good.
Records in Israel. He wants. So yeah, be
That
kind of
would be
nice.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there are a lot of people who love the old school stuff, so they'll love having the people who love the physical stuff, right? And I think there's still a precious few of them out there. It's just a matter of being able to make it, get it out to people. Because
Yeah.
so many people, they never had a physical form for music. Like, it's only been files. It's only been digital online and stuff, right? And back when you and I were going to parties, you wanted to hear this music, you had to go to the party.
Yeah.
You couldn't buy it.
Yeah.
It was just like, it was a completely different thing. And I think that on some level it made it quite special, because it was like this, you had to wait, and there was this excitement, and you made the effort to go to the party, and you were really there and really like soaking in the music. And
DJs exchanging music with each other, or like you'd meet certain artists, and they'd be like, oh, yeah, you want to play our new track and see how it like works on the dance floor. That's how we used to get our music. It was pretty cool.
I know.
I mean, it's like, yeah, it was cool. Like, you'd have like Sun Project, like back in the day, and Goa coming, or whoever like would come, and they'd be like, hey, we got this track, you want to like play it, try it out, and that's it's pretty cool. It's how you got your music.
And you had to sit there copying it in real time.
Yes.
Checking the levels and make sure, I went too hard, like tape runs out. Oh, you have to find another tape and all of that.
It was like having like party sessions, like sitting there, like, long hours a night and just like exchanging music.
Totally.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get that going in London, and then it was, now I'm really lucky because, I've got some really great friendships with some producers, so I'm able to get a lot of, when I'm playing newer sets, I'm able to get a lot of unreleased stuff from the producer, and it's nice not to have to mail a tape or something like that, right? Like, you get a WeTransfer and or Dropbox link, and then it's super fast. So.
Super fast. I'm just checking out the time here because I don't want.
Yeah, we want to make sure we don't go over.
It goes so quick, it's crazy. I wanted to ask you, like, I wanted to ask the one question. So I wanted to know if there's any like weird or funny experience you've had while DJing at some party. Like, is there a story? Any funny or weird experience while you were DJing at a party?
There's a few that come to mind. One of them, I remember playing at this one in Montreal, and this poor girl was probably tripping out quite badly. And she came up and says to me in French, "Do you have any normal music?" And I was like, "Sorry, I don't."
Oh dear.
But it's Shambhala. The first time I played at Shambhala was the first year they had that trance stage. It was 2003, and they gave me this like really great set time. And they had this sort of awning that was sort of set up, and it was kind of this opening around around the DJ booth, sort of like material and everything. And there was this guy who was trying to climb over the mixer into the DJ booth. And I was like, "Dude, yeah, no. And he's like, "Oh, but I really want to get in there." I was like, "Yeah, no." He's like, "I really like the music." I was like, "If you really like the music, you're gonna turn it off if you keep doing what you're doing. So please, like, go, please go away." And then finally, like somebody pulled him away. But that was, yeah, that was
somebody says this is normal music.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, normal is all relative, isn't it? I mean, it is for us. Yeah, that was pretty funny. I was tripping her out with some Pleiadians at that point. I can understand understand the damage.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
So funny. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things that happen, right? But it's weird, it's probably the same for you. I mean, you can remember parties from like 20 or more years ago.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that weird for you? That it's like, I walk into the kitchen, I can't remember why I walked in there, and I remember, Cooney played this track at like 3 a.m. in 1995. I can still remember stuff like this.
I mean, as the older I get, my brain is like, my kids get annoyed with me all the time because I'm like, oh, they're like, oh my god, like what is wrong with you? But yeah, like, tracks, like I can go through if I listen to a track and I can be like there at that time, or a certain track will take me back to like, really cool party there was. Yeah, it's amazing. That's
and
why,
and I think that's one of the things that's why it is. And going back to sort of what Mandy was saying about, like, yeah, for sure, there's like the old stuff is phenomenal, because I think there's the energy that they were making the music with back then, which is different than how it is now after like 10 or 20 years in the scene, or however long somebody's done it, right? So especially like the very first tracks that people were making, or in their first couple of years, there's just this like exploration and creativity and curiosity that's in the tracks. And for us, the first time we heard those tracks, like the mix that you were playing in the background, when we started, and with that one track, that was in my first mixtape that a DJ gave me, and that was why it's beautiful. It's like that. So it just takes me right back to 1994, where there's like, so, totally, like, it's crazy. The time travel.
I think personally, like, I think, like, people talking about like the music now and then, it's just like, for me personally, what I prefer about the music, like the older music, is that for me personally, there's more of a story in each track,
Totally.
Whereas,
100%.
I mean, obviously there's still like, a lot of the new music is like killer, but then there's also a lot of the new music that just sounds the same from beginning to end, and there's no like story.
100%. I mean, the music wasn't made with a conscious template back then. It wasn't cut and paste. It wasn't like, I think I've been analyzing this because, my classical music brain sort of kicks in. And one of the things that used to happen back then, and any producers, if you're listening, please pay attention, because this is, I think, important. Anytime there was a breakdown, like if the kick stopped, the bass line or some of the stuff in the upper registers was still continuing. So it wasn't like all new material in the breakdown. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just the kick that was like, the hi-hats are continuing or whatever. There was always something, the story was continuing in the breakdown. And so it was building up more tension, because you sort of feel, okay, the kick dropped out, but the story's continuing. And then you're waiting for the kick to come. And then it goes. And nowadays, all these breakdowns, it's like it's 16 bars, or it's 32 bars, and it's all formula, and it's all new. And it's, that's not really cutting it. Not everybody does that.
Yeah.
And I think occasionally doing it is fine. But if you have a whole set of music that's that template, it gets really predictable and really boring. And I think somebody just wrote, there was melody in the older music and journeys in every track. And it was like each track was like a microcosm of the whole set.
Music and journey in every track, yes.
Somebody's
just commenting there about it.
Totally. I mean, it was this whole, like, each each track was like a whole set and was like a whole
Yeah.
story.
A
And then you
whole
put one
story.
with another one, and it was like,
Yeah.
you know, I am missing that now. And
And
there is
that's why I
some,
think, yeah, and that's
yeah,
why I think my mom was saying, you know, the old, like, she prefers old, because it was just like, you know, yeah, like the
totally.
whole night, or yeah, it was just like a story flowing in and out. Whereas now it's more like chopped and, you know.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. So, you know, as much as like I've got very, you know, I do have pretty strong opinions about some of the music that's being made now, and where, you know, I'm very clear with what I like and what I don't like.
Yeah.
Not a fan of triplets at all. You know, it's just I can't do it. And you know, but you get somebody like Juno Reactor, like the way they did triplets in the '90s, or the way Hallucinogen did it. If somebody does it that way, it's very different. So I, you know, I don't want to be dogmatic about it, but I do miss the storyline and the melody, and I think in a sense the enthusiasm. Like there was a positivity, and there was like an exploration and a sort of you know,
Yeah.
a curiosity in the music back then that I'm missing a little bit now.
Yeah, I mean,
But
it's pretty. I mean, it's pretty cool that we have at least ZNA who's doing like old school, like their, like, you know, their parties is just old school, which I think
totally.
is so awesome. Like to have something like that, you know.
Totally. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's happening all over, you know, I mean, in Belgium, they've got like retro parties a lot, right? Like they're real
Yeah.
freaks about it. And, you know, in a lot of places, I think it's happening and it's great.
Yeah.
But, you know, but it's important to still have something new. But, you know, I would love
Of course.
if, you know,
Of
some of the
course.
new producers, and, you know, I mean, like, whenever I hear you play a new set as well, and I think it's the same for me, it's like we actually never know what it's going to be like. You know, like it's not just one sound. And Pete, who's booked both of us here in Vancouver, you know, it's one of the things he said about, you know, when he books me, and I think it's the same, you know, when I hear you, you never know what you're going to get, but you know, it's going to be like a story.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to play only one style of music, and you never play one style of music. Like it's always a variety.
Yeah, with me, I can, you know, I mean, so, yeah, just, yeah, just, I don't know, I think it's how, oh, that's what I was going to ask you also. I mean, I wanted to ask you as a DJ, like when you, like, do you have, when you know you're going to be playing somewhere, do you have everything planned out what you're going to play, or you just go up there and take it from like your first track and then just go along with the flow?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the gig. I always you have to leave it open to spontaneity. Like, I think it's good to have like a few, like I want to play this, and have some place markers. But I think that like the really important thing is, you know,
we need to
Toronto.
get you both in Toronto. Yeah.
Yeah, please. You know, like if things are too locked down, like it's become this thing to like really prepare sets, when like that's completely not a concept that existed back in the 90s. I mean, nobody prepared a set, right? It was all just like you start with the first track maybe, and in some cases I remember I was trying to start with the first track, and oh god, that machine's not plugged in, so I have to throw something in and I throw in the first track, and it's like, you know, synchronicity comes in and starts creating the story with you. And so that's my preference.
Okay.
If it's
because
a really
big DJ,
if it's a really big party, I want to have a little bit more like an idea, and you know, like doing it on computer, I need to make sure that my tracks all work together because of the syncing, you know, or like all of that stuff, and make sure that, you know, the levels are okay. But you have to be spontaneous for it to come alive, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I've always been anyways. I've never like, I mean, a lot of times I go up to when I'm going to be playing, I don't even know what I'm going to be starting with. I have no idea. I just go with what the other DJ is playing and what they finished with, and then take it from there. But then there's a lot of DJs that have their whole set already, like, you know, prepared.
I mean, it's a different kind of animal that you're doing. I mean, it's useful to know, like if you have experience and you know, oh, these two tracks go together, so when you're playing your set and you play this one track, it's like, oh, I remember that this goes well together, and you do that. But it's also great to just be able to have that spontaneity and just do whatever, right?
And do you have like a preference of like, do you like particularly like just like a certain BPM, or you just we don't really mind?
Full range. I mean, at ZNA last time, I played between 128 and 148 in the same set, and it totally went through this whole wave of like, absolutely. And I like to do that with new music too. I think it's you know, the thing is, because you and I learned how to mix on DAT, we learned that it's not just kick mixing. You know, when people say beat mixing, it bothers me because beat mixing, you can beat mix even with the ambient overlay, right? And the pulse continues, but it's not kick mixing. And I think there needs to be that distinction. And I think, you know, that's one of the things I love about, like, when you're playing on CDs, I still hear the DAT style of, like, you know, the kick's coming to an end and then you drop something in. And that's like just this creative, you know, like atmosphere shift, like shifting the lights, and all of a sudden you turn this light off and you turn another one on in the room, and like the whole atmosphere changes. So
which a lot of people don't like, but you know, that's
no, well,
I mean, you know,
bad.
I mean, what can you say when you're used to DJing a certain way, you know, or I mean, I'm not one of those who, I've never been one of those who you know, kick mixes or beat mixes. Never.
No.
It's never.
I mean,
I
learned how, like I taught myself how, and you know, sometimes I like doing it, but I rarely go 3 tracks without shifting it to a non-kick mix. Like there has to be, for me, it's like 3 maximum, and still the flavor of the track needs to change somehow. Otherwise, because if it's all the same style, like for 3 tracks in a row and kick mixed, it's like there's kind of no point for me. So, but you know, it's different styles, and the thing to have, I think, is like, if people really want retro, like, you know, Domino plays like Domino, Mark plays like Mark, Mike McGuire plays like Mike McGuire, Dino plays like Dino. Like, all of these DJs did their own style of mixing and their own approach, and in a sense you didn't know what you would get, but they have their style, and that's kind of what you're there for, is to hear somebody else make a story, not to have the story told, the story you already know you want told in the way that you think you want it. It's like there needs to be, like, I think the new experience is what, I think that's what drew us to this whole thing to begin with. We're getting close to the time, eh?
Yeah, we are.
We can talk for hours about this stuff. I
know. Yeah, I mean, you know, eventually I'm going to do part 2s, I think, for certain people. So, we should talk about that as well. I want to say thanks for being here and doing this interview. And thanks for all, you know, the people that have been here and with their getting involved in the conversation. And
thanks.
Yeah, and hopefully see you soon.
Yeah, I know, in person as well as on camera.
In person, yeah. And awesome. Let's do this again for sure.
For sure. I'm really happy you're doing this, and I've watched all of your interviews so far. It's just been so great, and I think it's
thank you, and
great sharing to hear all these different perspectives. And
thank you guys. Thanks for your support, and you know, good vibes always. You know.
You bet.
And everybody take care, and see you soon.
For sure. All right, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Cheers. Thanks, Dom.
Bye. Bye.